We all have a certain spark in ourselves. That spark is from the soul. When we were born, God gave us His soul. The soul is what sustains us, is what keeps us alive. Yes, every single one of us has a soul. A soul is part of God. Now, when that soul is first given to the child, when the child is born, the first breath of air, it's when they inhale, the soul goes into them. And that soul stays with them to the end of their life. And at the end of their life, that soul will exhale out of the body and return back to its creator. When the child is born, a child is pure. His soul is pure. A child is so pure that, contrary to many people say that children are born sinners, that's not true. That's incorrect. Children are born pure. They have no sin. They haven't had time to sin. And they are only responsible for their sins, not for anyone else's sins. So we can't say that a person is born a sinner. That just doesn't make any sense, because the child has not sinned. So when a child is born, a child is pure. And when you hold a child for the very first time, you look at this beautiful creation that was created in the image of God. This child has a soul. That soul is so powerful that it takes a physical body and it gives it life. It gives it vitality, that it's able to breathe, eat, sleep, and drink, and do everything a human being has to do. So the soul is a very powerful soul. It's a spiritual soul. It's a part of God. The soul, as it continues to journey through life, can either grow and be fed and continue to shine brightly as a godly soul. And as a child emerges and becomes a toddler, and then becomes a young little guy, and then grows into becoming a teenager, yes, when the soul is shining beautifully, then you can see that this child is gifted, is special. This child's got a spirit to him. But what happens when the soul is not fed? When the soul is not nurtured? When the soul is not given what it needs to continue on being like a fiery flame? When the soul is neglected, any spirituality, when the soul is neglected, any spiritual environment or experiences or acts, then all of a sudden the soul becomes concealed. And all of a sudden the soul could just get layers upon layers upon layers, that the soul is just hidden away. It's just a spark. That spark never diminishes. So as we go through life, when we think about the concept that we are the guardian of the soul, and when we realize that God gave us the soul, that we should protect it, not just exist and have it, but to nurture it, to work with it. And the soul is so powerful that it could give you what you need. The soul is our positive inclination. It's our godly soul. It's our inspiration. It could answer many of your questions, many of your doubts. We all wake up and we don't know what's going to face us during the day. When you are synchronized and you are in sync with your soul, your day is going to be a much more successful day. But many of us don't know, how do you nurture a soul? What kind of food does it need? The answer is, a soul was sent here on this earth to accomplish. When you accomplish that mission, that's how you're nurturing the soul. When you pray to God, you're nurturing the soul. When you study the Bible, you study the Torah, you are nurturing the soul. When you do goodness and kindness and acts of kindness, you are nurturing the soul. When you talk positivity, when you compliment someone, when you lift someone's spirits up, when you change a person's life, you are nurturing the soul. That is the energy for the soul. And the more you feed your soul, the more energized you'll become. And the more spiritual you'll become. Because you are doing what you were sent here for. But what happens when the soul seems to be diminished? The soul will never be diminished because there'll be a spark that will always be there. Just like a spark can ignite a huge fire, the spark that we all have in each one of us has that potential. Now, over the 40 years that I've been a rabbi, that I've practiced from the pulpit and individually, I've met young children, teenagers, grown-ups, even elderlies who have been void of any spirituality in their whole life. But when we met and we spoke, I was able to ignite that spark. And all of a sudden, they began feeling this spirituality. They began coming to services. They began studying, practicing, and they became alive, even at the age 70, 80, 60s. It's amazing. For 6 decades, a person could be void of any spirituality, but that spark gets lit. How does it get lit? It's when you connect with the person. When you look in their eyes is the window of the soul. When you actually communicate with a person in sincerity and pureness, and you talk to them about our mission in life, about the more important things of life, and together you are creating an environment that you are igniting that spark in that person. So we should truly never underestimate our impact on the next person. And the person themselves may never know when is their spark going to get ignited. One of the greatest sages that ever lived, his name is Rabbi Akiva. He's the author of the great Talmud, the oral law that we all have today. And he was a giant of giants. But lest you know that for the first 40 years of his life, his soul was concealed. There was barely a spark. He had nothing to do with practicing Judaism. He was a total ignoramus. But at 40 years old, he was taking a walk and he saw water dripping down on a rock, and it caught his attention, and he noticed an indentation in the rock. And he was mesmerized by that. And it clicked. His spark got ignited. And he realized water, which is such a fine material, so liquefied as water, can drop and penetrate a hard rock. The two opposites can happen. Then certainly Torah can penetrate my heart. For 40 years, I didn't study any Torah. I didn't know what Torah was. My soul was hard like a rock. But I know if I let the Torah in, and Torah is compared to water, it sustains our life, then it will penetrate my heart as well. And that is when Rabbi Akiva began studying the Hebrew alphabet, studying Hebrew, and learned Judaism, and he ended up becoming one of the greatest notable sages of all time. And it all started from one event. And that is the spark that we all have. So not only do we have a spark, but the people that we encounter, they too have sparks. And never underestimate another person. Never underestimate what's going to ignite this spark. So let's do everything we can to try to connect and inspire the next person near you, whether it's your spouse, your children, your in-laws, your neighbors, your co-workers. Be the one to send out signals of positivity, warmth, love, compliments, just niceties, kindnesses, all that. You never know how it's going to affect the next person. And that's going to be the fuel that's going to ignite the spark that's already there. So everyone has a spark there. In other words, everyone has the potential to have their spark ignited. And when your spark is alive, It is our responsibility and opportunity to try to ignite the next person's spark. When we light a candle, there's only one way we can light another candle. You cannot do it from a distance, but you need to bring the candle close to the wick of the next candle. You almost have to touch and connect and bond with the other wick for the wick to catch the flame. And you know, when you do that, your flame doesn't get diminished. You don't lose anything. You just gave away fire, a flame to another candle, but you didn't lose anything. You gave away something, but you still kept what you had. And that is your spirituality. And that is what's being accomplished on this world, is when our soul came down to the world, when God said, the day you were born, the world can no longer exist without you. You are doing your part to keep your soul alive, to keep your spark glowing and a fiery fire. And then you'll be able to ignite other people's spark as well. As a famous song that I was taught in my summer camp, no matter where you may roam, you can always come back home. Which means any person, no matter how many years they have gone by, their spark that they have in them can be reignited. Sometimes it happens during Rosh Hashanah, the New Year's, Yom Kippur, during Hanukkah, during Passover. It's unpredictable when this spark gets ignited. But let's be the one to give it opportunity. And once your spark does get ignited, don't diminish it. Build on it, feed it, grow with it. One good deed leads to another good deed. One good action leads to another good action. The reward of a good deed is the ability to have been able to have done the good deed. And that is what the spark is all about. Every person has that spark. Respect it, cherish it, acknowledge it, recognize it, and work with it, because it's going to do you so much good. When your spark gets ignited and turns into a fiery flame of spirituality, it's going to light up your life, it's going to light up the life of your household, of your workplace, and your days are going to be completed days, fulfilled days, and your life will be a fulfilled life. Let us all bring light to the world. A little bit of light pushes away a lot of darkness. God bless you. God loves you.